Esperanza Morales was 34 years old when her life was brutally cut short in the blue waters of her own swimming pool in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. It was not a death anyone could have predicted for a woman who had dedicated her entire existence to saving lives, especially lives that most people considered too dangerous to save. On her 2-hectare property on the outskirts of the colonial town, Esperanza had created a makeshift sanctuary that was home to some of Mexico's most feared creatures. It wasn't a licensed zoo or an official reserve. It was simply the home of a woman whose heart couldn't ignore suffering, even when that suffering came wrapped in claws and fangs. For 15 years, she had rescued wounded jaguars, orphaned coyotes, abandoned venomous snakes, and even a black bear that had lost a paw in an illegal trap. Her home was a safe haven for the rejects of the animal kingdom, and she was proud to be known in the region as the godmother of beasts. But among all her charges, none had captured her heart like Luna, a female jaguar who had come to her as a 2-month-old cub, orphaned and dying, found next to her mother's body on a dusty road in Jalisco. If Esperanza had known that this little golden feline would one day become her executioner. It was September 2018 when Luna came into Esperanza's life. The cub had been brought in by a truck driver who had found the devastating scene on the road, an adult jaguar killed by poachers, and next to it, a golden ball of fur that was barely breathing. "She's going to die," said the man, handing over the cub wrapped in a blanket. "But I thought maybe you—" Esperanza looked into those newborn blue eyes. They hadn't yet acquired the amber color characteristic of adults, and felt something break inside her chest. The little jaguar weighed no more than a domestic cat. Her breathing was irregular, and there was an infected wound on her left hind leg. "We're going to fight, little one," Esperanza whispered, stroking the golden head. "I'll take care of you." During the first 3 months, Luna lived inside Esperanza's house, sleeping in a box lined with blankets next to her bed. Esperanza fed her with a bottle every 2 hours, cleaned her wounds twice a day, and sang lullabies whenever the little one cried in pain. It was impossible not to fall in love with that little golden creature who purred like a giant cat whenever Esperanza came near. Luna grew quickly. At 6 months, she no longer fit inside the house and was moved to a large enclosure in the backyard, complete with trees to climb and a small pool to cool off in. At 2 years old, she weighed 154 pounds of golden muscle. At 5, she was a magnificent 200-pound jaguar, measuring 7 feet from the tip of her snout to the tip of her tail. But to Esperanza, Luna was still the same vulnerable baby she had saved years ago. Every day, Esperanza would enter the enclosure to visit Luna. She fed her by hand, stroked her golden coat, and even let the jaguar sleep on her lap during the hot afternoons. The photos she posted on social media showed a connection that defied all laws of nature. A woman sitting peacefully next to one of the most deadly predators in the Americas. "Luna knows me," Esperanza would tell concerned visitors. "She knows I'm her mother." Wildlife experts who occasionally visited her property left with their stomachs in knots. Dr. Ricardo Vazquez, a biologist at the University of Guadalajara, had warned Esperanza several times about the growing dangers. "Esperanza, please," he had pleaded during his last visit. "A jaguar is not a domestic cat. Its instincts. You don't know her like I do," Esperanza had replied, smiling as Luna rubbed against her legs like a giant cat. Luna is different. How tragically wrong she was. In the summer of 2023, subtle but significant changes began to appear in Luna's behavior. She had reached full sexual maturity, and with it came instincts that no amount of human love could suppress. During feeding sessions, Luna began to growl softly, not out of aggression, but out of territorial possession. When other animals from the sanctuary approached her enclosure, she paced back and forth, marking her territory with an intensity Esperanza had never seen before. There were minor incidents that should have served as warnings. Once, when Esperanza brought a veterinarian to examine Luna, the jaguar growled so menacingly that the man refused to enter the enclosure. On another occasion, a tourist who had paid to visit the sanctuary was charged by Luna. The jaguar lunged at the fence with such force that the iron bars shook. "She's just being territorial," Esperanza rationalized. "She's protecting her home." But Dr. Vasquez saw something different when he last visited in July 2023. Luna had changed. Her eyes no longer showed the conditioned docility she had developed over the years. There was something primitive there, something awakening. "Esperanza," he said gravely, Luna is no longer a puppy. She is an adult predator. Please consider donating her to a professional zoo." "Never," Esperanza had replied with a vehemence that surprised even herself. "Luna would die of sadness without me." Unfortunately, it would be Esperanza who died first. The morning of August 15th, 2023 dawned unusually hot, even by Mexican summer standards. The temperature reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit by noon, and even Luna, normally active during the day, had taken refuge in the shade. Esperanza decided it would be the perfect day for one of her favorite swimming sessions. Since she had installed a larger pool in Luna's enclosure 2 years earlier, it had become a tradition for them to swim together on the hottest days. It was a tradition that would prove fatal. Around 2 p.m., and Esperanza put on her favorite blue bikini, ironically, almost the same color as Luna's eyes had been as a baby. She grabbed a towel, a bottle of water, and walked calmly to the enclosure, as she had done hundreds of times before. Luna was lying in the shade, panting slightly from the heat. When she saw Esperanza approaching, the Jaguar raised her head and let out that low, guttural sound that Esperanza always interpreted as a hello. "Hello, my love," Esperanza said softly, opening the gate to the enclosure. "Want to swim with me?" Luna rose slowly, her muscles rippling beneath her golden fur. There was something different about her posture, a tension that Esperanza attributed to the excessive heat. She should have paid closer attention. Esperanza entered the pool first, as she always did. The water was deliciously cool against her sun-warmed skin. She positioned herself in the middle of the pool, waiting for Luna to join her as usual. But Luna didn't get in right away. Instead, she stood at the edge of the pool, watching Esperanza with an intensity that was almost palpable. Her amber eyes were fixed, alert, and there was something about the tension in her muscles that should have set off alarm bells in Esperanza's mind. "Come on, Luna," Esperanza called, splashing water with her hands. "The water's perfect." Luna took a step forward, then stopped again. Her nostrils flared, sniffing the air with a concentration Esperanza had never noticed before. It was as if the Jaguar was processing information that her human senses couldn't pick up. What Luna was feeling was something primitive, something that had been suppressed by 5 years of conditioning, but was now resurfacing with full force: the hunting instinct. Finally, Luna entered the water. But her movements were different, more cautious, more predatory. Instead of swimming directly to Esperanza as she always did, Luna circled the pool, keeping her distance. "What's going on, little one?" Esperanza asked, finally noticing the change in behavior. "Are you okay?" It was then that Luna stopped swimming and remained perfectly still in the water, her eyes fixed on Esperanza with an intensity that made her blood run cold. It was the look of a predator assessing its prey. What happened next lasted only seconds, but to Esperanza, it must have seemed like an eternity. Luna, with the lethal speed and grace of a born predator, moved through the water like a golden torpedo. There was no hesitation, no warning, just pure, deadly motion. Esperanza barely had time to register what was happening before Luna was upon her. The Jaguar's powerful jaws closed around her left shoulder, and Esperanza's world exploded in pain and terror. "Luna, no!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the hot afternoon air. But the creature attacking her was no longer Luna, her adopted daughter. It was a 200-pound jaguar acting on 2 million years of instinct. Luna began what experts call the death roll, the spinning motion that big cats use to disorient and kill their prey. The pool water became a whirlpool of foam, blood, and absolute terror. Esperanza fought desperately, but she was fighting against forces that transcended any emotional connection she thought she had built. Miguel Herrera, the gardener who worked on the property 3 times a week, had arrived early that day to beat the excessive heat. He was pruning roses in the front garden when he heard the screams. At first, he thought someone was playing in the pool. After all, he knew Esperanza often swam with her animals. But there was something about the screams that made him stop and pay attention. They were screams of pure terror. Miguel dropped his tools and ran toward the back of the property. What he saw when he reached Luna's enclosure made him fall to his knees in shock. The pool looked like an aquatic battlefield. The water, once crystal clear, was now stained red, and in the center of this bloody pool, Luna held Esperanza in her powerful jaws, spinning repeatedly to keep her prey submerged. Miguel could see moments when Esperanza's face emerged from the water, her eyes wide with horror and her hands flailing frantically. but every time she tried to breathe, Luna pulled her back down. "My God!" Miguel shouted, grabbing his cell phone with trembling hands. "Help! A woman is being attacked by a jaguar!" But even as he dialed the emergency numbers, Miguel knew it would be too late. The struggle in the pool continued for a few more agonizing minutes. Esperanza, driven by adrenaline and the instinct to survive, desperately tried to reach the edge of the pool. Her fingernails scraped the concrete, leaving bloody marks that would remain as silent evidence of her last moments of struggle. Luna, meanwhile, demonstrated the brutal efficiency of an experienced predator. Every movement was calculated to maximize damage and minimize her prey's chances of escape. When Esperanza tried to pull away, Luna adjusted her grip. When she tried to scream for help, Luna kept her underwater. It was the oldest dance in the world. Predator and prey, playing for the highest stakes possible. Miguel remained outside the enclosure, unable to help without becoming the next victim. He could hear the sirens approaching in the distance, but he knew that even if they arrived at that moment, there was little they could do. Esperanza's movements grew progressively weaker. The loss of blood, combined with the repeated periods of submersion, was taking its deadly toll. Her attempts to free herself became sporadic, then occasional, then ceased altogether. That was how 34-year-old Esperanza Morales met her end, in the waters of her own swimming pool, at the jaws of the creature she had loved as a daughter. When the paramedics and police finally arrived, they found a scene that would haunt them forever. Luna had dragged Esperanza's lifeless body to the shallow end of the pool and was standing guard over it, as if protecting her prey from other predators. Animal control officers, called in as backup, immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. This was not a domestic animal that had gone berserk. It was a wild predator acting exactly as nature had programmed it to do. "It's an adult jaguar," said lead expert Dr. Enrique Santos, assessing the situation through the fence. "We can't go in while she's protecting the body." It took 2 hours to sedate Luna with tranquilizer darts. She refused to move away from Esperanza's body, displaying the same territorial instinct that had caused the tragedy in the first place. When they finally managed to remove Luna from the enclosure, they found a body that told a story of silent horror. Dr. Maria Elena Vasco, the medical examiner who conducted Esperanza's autopsy, had seen many violent deaths in her career, but she had rarely encountered such precise and devastating injuries. "The damage is consistent with an attack by a large feline," she noted in her official report. "Multiple deep lacerations, fractured collarbone, and evidence of drowning." The bite marks on Esperanza showed the incredible strength of Luna's jaws, canines that had penetrated more than 2 inches into the flesh, causing catastrophic damage to muscles and blood vessels. But the official cause of death was listed as drowning, the result of repeated death rolls that Luna had performed. It was a cruel irony. Esperanza had drowned in the pool she had built specifically to please the creature that killed her. Investigators also found disturbing evidence in the enclosure. Claw marks on the walls showed that Luna had been restless in the weeks leading up to the attack. Hair found on the bars indicated that she had been testing the limits of her confinement. All the signs were there, Dr. Santos noted grimly. They just weren't recognized. With Esperanza's death, Luna was officially classified as a dangerous animal by the Mexican government. There was no question about her fate. Clear protocols dictated that any wild animal involved in a human death must be euthanized. But the decision was not taken lightly. Dr. Santos and his team spent hours studying Luna's behavior after sedation, trying to understand what had led to the attack. "It wasn't malice," Dr. Santos explained to the press afterward. "It was pure instinct. Luna acted exactly as a wild jaguar should act when it senses an opportunity to hunt." Euthanasia was performed 48 hours after the attack, using an overdose of sedatives that ensured Luna died peacefully, without pain. Her body was cremated and her ashes scattered on the property where she had lived for 5 years. Thus ended the lives of 2 extraordinary females, one who loved too much and one who simply followed her nature. Esperanza's death sent shockwaves through Mexico's animal conservation community. She was known and respected for her work with rescued animals, and many struggled to reconcile the image of the gentle woman they knew with the brutal reality of her death. Esperanza had a good heart, Dr. Vasquez said in a television interview. But love doesn't change DNA. A jaguar is a jaguar, no matter how much love it receives. Esperanza's sanctuary was shut down by authorities a week after her death. The remaining animals were redistributed to licensed zoos and other appropriate facilities. The property was sold by her family, who couldn't bear the memories of what had happened there. Miguel Herrera, the gardener who witnessed the attack, never fully recovered from the trauma. He developed recurring nightmares and eventually moved to another city, unable to continue living with the images he had witnessed. The tragedy had claimed more victims than just Esperanza and Luna. Animal behavior experts from around the world studied the case of Esperanza and Luna, trying to understand what had made this seemingly harmonious relationship so deadly explosive. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, an ethologist at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, offered an explanation that has become widely accepted in the scientific community. The problem wasn't that Luna was aggressive, she explained. The problem was that Esperanza misinterpreted years of conditioning as actual domestication. According to Dr. Martinez, Luna had developed a behavioral tolerance for Esperanza's presence, but that tolerance was superficial, based on routine and familiarity, not true domestication. When her hunting instincts were triggered that day, perhaps by the heat, perhaps by hormonal changes, perhaps simply by a combination of factors, all that learned tolerance vanished instantly. The lesson was clear. Human love cannot rewrite millions of years of evolution. Today, 2 years after Esperanza Morales' death, her story has become a standard case study in animal conservation programs throughout Mexico. Universities use her case to teach about the dangers of false domestication, and stricter regulations have been implemented to control private ownership of wild animals. A foundation was established in Esperanza's name, focused on educating the public about responsible conservation and the limits of human-animal interaction. Ironically, the work she loved most, saving wild animals, continues through this foundation, but with much stricter safety protocols. Dr. Vasquez, who had repeatedly tried to warn Esperanza about the dangers, became a leading spokesperson for exotic animal regulation in Mexico. Esperanza died doing what she loved, he often says in his lectures. But she also died because she confused love with control over nature. That is a confusion none of us can afford. Her death was not in vain if it serves to save other lives, both human and animal. In the small chapel in San Miguel de Allende, where Esperanza was buried, a bronze plaque tells her story in simple words. She loved animals more than her own life. It's an accurate epitaph, but incomplete. Esperanza didn't die because she loved too much. She died because she believed that love was enough to overcome predatory instincts hardwired into DNA over millions of years. Luna, in her 5 years in captivity, never stopped being a wild jaguar. She simply learned to tolerate human presence until specific circumstances, heat, hormones, opportunity, reactivated ancestral programming that had never really disappeared. There was no villain in this tragedy, just a woman who loved beyond prudence and an animal that acted according to its unchanging nature.